G'day guys and welcome to another Nathan's Beer Review. Today we've got a Christmas / Boxing Day special for you guys today. It needs no fancy introduction. Coming in at 4.9% alcohol by volume in this very iconic 750 milliliter? Yeah, 750 milliliter Australian style long neck. It's Victoria Bitter. VB. What can I say about this beer that Australians don't know? Absolutely nothing. It is just purely an Australian icon. Yeah, it's drunk all over the country, and nothing divides Australia like a discussion on VB. You go to pubs from Sydney to Perth, Darwin to Adelaide, Melbourne to Cairns. VB is found in 99% of pubs. If it's a mainstream pub, chances are they've got a Carlton United contract, or at least a couple of beers contracted with Carlton and United, and the chances are VB is going to be on tap. It's Australia's most famous lager. For overseas viewers, forget what you've heard about Foster's being Australian for beer. This is Australian for beer. Victoria Bitter. Or if you really want to say it like an Australian, Victoria Bitter. Change the T's to a D. 4.9% alcohol by volume, brewed by the Carlton and United breweries down in Victoria, Melbourne. Carlton United, of course, are owned by the big global consortium that is Anheuser-Busch. It comes in every possible size imaginable. It comes in cans. It comes in those classic, iconic stubbies. It comes in these VB, in these long necks. It's an Australian adjunct lager. Can I tell you about it? You know, a bit of history about the beer, maybe. The origins date back to 1854 when it was first brewed, but began to garner wide popularity from the 1960s with an innovative television advertising campaign with a jingle very similar to the theme song of The Magnificent Seven. Go on YouTube, guys. Just type in VB ads. Watch everyone you can. I think there's one video up there that goes from about 1960 all the way up to about 2008, 2009, and they're all very similar. But that is what Australians have been bombarded with on television and, you know, through marketing campaigns for decades upon decades upon decades. Like most Australian lagers, VB is made using a wort stream brewing process and uses a portion of cane sugar to thin out the body of the beer. So, yeah, it uses cane sugar as an adjunct. In 2004, VB commanded more than 25% of the market share, meaning that 1 in 4 beers sold in Australia was VB. In 2007, there was massive controversy with this beer. Foster's at the time, who owned Carlton United, they announced it would cut the alcohol content of VB from 4.9% to 4.8%. In 2009, they reduced it further down to 4.6%, which is what most Australian lagers are at, to his new Melbourne Bitter Carlton Draft, all 4.6%, in an effort to make further savings. This caused national outrage across Australia. Currently there are massive riots in France over fuel taxes and just the French being French. Had Australians, we were about that close to doing the same thing over VB. It was, people were writing into newspapers, ringing out their local radio stations, complaining, bombarding Foster's and Carlton United with complaints. And eventually, a couple of years later, they announced it would go back to its original 4.9%, much to much jubilation. So it went back to its original recipe, 4.9%, and original packaging. Basically, Carlton United tried to do to VB what Coca-Cola did with New Coke, and it backfired horribly. They lost a lot of market share when they dropped it down to 4.6%. What else can I say? According to AC Nielsen in 2009, VB was claimed to be Australia's only billion-dollar retail beer brand, selling the equivalent of one slab a second. A slab is a 24 bottle case. It was the only Australian beer brand that is in the top 3 in every state, and it still holds the highest market share of all beer sold in Australia, except in 2012 where it lost that position to Forest Gold, but I do believe it has now attained that. In April 2011, it held 13.7% volume share, and Forest Gold dropped down to 11.7%. It's sold all around the world now. You can get it in New Zealand, Bali, Indonesia, the UK. I do believe you can get it in the United States now for Australian expats living over in the US. And yeah, aside from that, despite it being labelled as an English-style bitter, it's more a commercial lager. Yeah, it's just VB. There's nothing more, nothing less I can talk about it. Let's crack it open into a Headmaster schooner glass, the most iconic Australian beer glass, which is what you're going to find it in pubs and clubs around Australia. Comes in this iconic gold crown, which just says twist top. Nothing fancy, just like the beer. It's plain. You just crack it open, so. There is a best before date on this, the 6th of August 2019, so the beer is about 3 or 4 months old. Now, it does say no added preservatives, but they do add cane sugar as an adjunct. Have I had it before? Of course I've had it before. I'm an Australian, for Christ's sakes. You can't live in Australia and not have had VB before. Is it my favourite beer? Not particularly. But let's give it an honest, straightforward, unbiased review. So, sorry, my hands are just a bit wet from holding it, so I couldn't quite crack it open. All this is embarrassing. Yeah, no smoke on the opening there. Victoria Bitter for a hard-earned thirst, which has been their slogan for decades. A hard-earned thirst needs a big cold beer, and the best cold beer is Vic. Victoria Bitter, VB, Mother's Milk, very best. There's also some very negative connotations with VB, so into the Australian pub schooner we go. It's a very hot day here in Sydney, 38 degrees. It's Boxing Day today. So I was going to do this review outside, but I thought I'd stay inside and do it in the air-conditioned comfort of my kitchen. Pouring into the schooner, it looks like a lager. It looks very much like a stereotypical Australian adjunct beer. Light golden straw, yellow appearance. Very golden, you know. People associate golden colours with good things. So, a nice gold, clear colour. There's no sediment whatsoever. It just looks like yellow water, and pours to a 1 to 2 finger soapy white head that clumps a little in the middle. I don't know if the camera's going to pick up on that, but that suggests that they chuck an adjunct into the beer, which we do know is cane sugar at the very least, possibly a little bit of corn to help thin it out a little bit. So yeah, that's what it looks like. Let's get on to the smell, guys. Cheers. Such an iconic Australian smell. Pride of Ringwood hops, which are quite a bitter hop. Got that sweet cane sugar, barley malt sort of smell to it. And that's sort of where the positives for me stop. Yeah, you got this sort of like barley sort of smell going on. Bitterness from the hops. A slight, I don't want to say stale smell, but people refer to it as a wet cardboard sort of smell. I call it a wet carpet, not so much a wet cardboard smell, which you get if you've ever walked inside an old school Australian classic pub that hasn't changed their carpet in 30, 40 years and has had litres and litres of beer dropped on it. It develops this sort of very stale, very stiff, very wet carpet, dried wet carpet smell to it, and that's classic VB smell. Yeah, it just smells very sweet. Very sugary sweet. Bit grainy, bready, sort of yeasty sort of notes going on. Bit bland, but it does smell refreshing on what is a 36-degree day here today, so cheers, guys. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Boxing Day, so cheers, guys. A very, very smooth, a very, very easy drinking, very relatively clean, especially off that first mouthful, Australian lager. Medium level carbonation. Very sweet, courtesy of the cane sugar additives. Australian adjunct beers use Pride of Ringwood hops. Pretty much all the big major Australian breweries use Pride of Ringwood hops. Has this iconic bitter sort of twang to it. Not overly bitter, but at one point Pride of Ringwood was considered the most bitter of the hop varieties around the world. I mean, we're going back a few decades now before the innovation of things like Cascade and Chinook hops, but yeah, it has that nice sort of sweet, bitter edge to it. But yeah, very sweet, you know. But aside from the sweetness and the slight bitterness, there's nothing overly offensive about it. It's definitely a beer that you want to drink cold. Once it starts to warm up, like I said, you hear people talk about this wet cardboard, musty, stale sort of flavour coming through. And I've never liked that about VB. It's the sort of beer that if I'm going to drink it, it needs to be ice cold. But on a sweltering hot Australian summer day, you know, a couple of cold VBs, they don't go down too badly. In fact, you can almost speak positively of them. I used to hate this beer. You know, when I did my old beer review channel, Aussie beer reviews, I think I was only about 19, 20 at the time. I hated VB. You know, if someone was on fire, if my worst enemy was on fire, I'd probably use it to put them out instead of water with. So, yeah, it's just very sweet. 4.9%, so it's a decent full strength alcohol. There's little lacing on this glass. But yeah, it's just very easy drinking, very sweet when drunk cold. Once it starts to warm up, however, the flavour turns, you know, a bit south. It starts going a bit that wet cardboard, that wet carpet flavours and aromas you might have heard Australian beer reviewers talk about. Yeah, that sort of, it's almost like not a sourness, but a, this one's not too bad. Maybe my palates are changing. I wouldn't go as far as to say I enjoy VB, but I definitely don't hate it as much as I used to. I definitely have come around, you know, not quite full circle, but I can definitely see why it's an enjoyable beer. I can definitely see why it's Australia's favourite lager. It's very easy drinking. It's very sweet. It is very refreshing. I mean, I must say, I've just chucked this straight out of the fridge. And, you know, it is very refreshing. And I suppose in an Australian summer, when you're looking for a lager, you're looking for refreshment. You want something that's quenching your thirst. And one or two of these are going to hit the spot for me, I must say. I must say one or two on a really hot day, they're going to do the trick sort of thing. But there is nothing overly special about it. It's just not offensive when drunk ice cold. But aside from that, yeah, it's just a very very decent Australian lager. It's not overly shocking. Like, you know, years ago I would have given this a D. If you're stupid enough to drink it warm, you're stupid. But, you know, you chuck a couple of cans in the esky with some ice, you chuck it in the freezer, you chuck it in the fridge. Couple of cans, ice cold. You can't go too wrong. I do find you start sessioning on these, you end up with a headache at the end of the night and the next morning. Yes, that is called a hangover, but I do find the hangovers on these adjunct lagers tend to be somewhat worse. So, what am I going to give Australia's most famous VB? I'm going to give it a B-. It's not terrible. It's not great. Are there better lagers out in the market? Absolutely. Are there worse lagers out in the market? Undoubtedly. But it's easy drinking. It's fair. It's not awful unless you drink it warm. And, you know, be it the success of the marketing, you know, throughout the decades over the last 50, 60, 70 years, it has become Australia's most popular beer for a reason. So, a B- for Australia's most famous Victoria Bitter. It's a good beer. It's on the lower end of good, but it's better than average. It's definitely better than poor, and it's not completely shit. So, a B-, I get the feeling, is actually a very fair score. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this schooner. I'm going to go watch some cricket. Cheers for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, please click subscribe. If there's a video you want to see me review, a beer you want to see me do a video on and review, please let me know down in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next review, guys. Cheers.